Foundation's mental health program. Today is World Suicide Prevention Day 2021, and the motto for World Suicide Prevention Day this year is Creating Hope Through Action. This event has been arranged by Sajida Foundation, Sajida Foundation's mental health program, as I already mentioned, and our media partner for this event is Dhaka Tribune. So before I introduce our guests, I would like to spend a little bit of time to give a kind of background on World Suicide Prevention Day, or WSPD, at first, and then also talk about why these webinars have been arranged. So WSPD, or World Suicide Prevention Day, is an awareness day observed on 10th September every year in order to provide worldwide commitment and action to prevent suicides with various activities around the world since 2003. As an active advocate for health, happiness, and dignity for all, Sajida Foundation's aim towards a better quality of life for those underprivileged steers the organization to create awareness about mental health and well-being. Sajida Mental Health Program will hold 8 webinars with esteemed guests from the Mental Health Network from both the international as well as local platforms, addressing audiences in order to create a more widespread awareness. And today is the first episode of the webinar series. We all know that suicide is considered to be one of the main causes of death all across the globe. Completed suicide is a serious global health problem with far-reaching social, emotional, and economic consequences, causing around 800,000 deaths annually. Over 1 in every 100 deaths, that's 1.3% in 2019, were the result of suicide. Recent research findings have also highlighted that every 40 seconds, an individual from across the world is committing suicide. There might be many factors influencing the significant rise in suicide, and one of the most common issues is stigma, which causes the victims to prevent themselves from seeking help, denying them to getting access to the relevant mental health services they need. As such, similar is the case in Bangladesh. It is a country of, as all of you know, most likely a country of 165 million people, and records approximately 10,000 suicidal deaths every year, which was reported by World Health Organization. It is also the 4th leading cause of overall injury-related deaths and 2nd most important cause of injury-associated death in age groups of 20 to 39 years in Bangladesh. Despite being one of the leading causes of death, suicide is still considered as an activity of criminal offense, which leads to an even more significant number of underreported events. World Suicide Prevention Day is a reminder that as a community, we all have a part to play and responsibility towards everyone in the world. And this year's World Suicide Prevention Day, as I said before, the motto is Creating Hope Through Action. This reflects the fact that there is always an alternative to suicide and aims to inspire confidence and light in all of us. That our actions, no matter how big or small, may provide hope to those who are struggling. With that said, now I'd like to introduce our esteemed guests who are with us today. First, I'd like to introduce you to Dr. Yashim Iqbal. She is the founder and director of Kanpeteroi Emotional Support and Suicide Prevention Helpline, and she's a research scientist at Global Ties for Children at New York University. Dr. Iqbal. Hello.
Hi, thank you so much for the introduction.
You're welcome. How are you doing today?
I'm wonderful, thank you.
Great. Looking forward to our talk. Let me go on
Absolutely.
to our next guest. I hope I get this pronunciation right. As I've been told, it's Ria Bitsu Noche. Is that right?
That's correct.
Ria?
That's correct, Sia. That's correct.
Yeah, okay. So Ria is a Connect Counseling and Employee Wellness Services Manager at Lifeline Johannesburg. And she believes that she's serving people through safe emotional well-being spaces. Hi, Ria.
Hi, Surya. Thank you so much for having us as Lifeline Johannesburg.
I think you're on mute, maybe.
Pardon? Are you able to hear me?
Uh, can everyone hear her? Can everyone hear Ria? Or
Okay. I think Dr. Iqbal can hear me, but thank you so much for having us as Lifeline Johannesburg.
um,
Oh.
I think we were having some network issues. Can you hear me?
I can hear you clearly, Surya. So
Oh,
thank you so much for having us as Lifeline Johannesburg. That's what I said. Thank you.
yeah. Thank you for joining us. Let me go on to our next guest, and then we can have a talk more. We also have with us Mohammed Zahidul Islam, founder secretary, Society for Voluntary Activities, member of IASP, former national representative of for ISP 2008 to 2017. Also, he's the assistant professor, Department of Statistics of Shishukunju School and College, Cadet College Campus, Chinaida. Mr. Islam, welcome to this webinar. Maybe he's not there. Has he not joined yet? I'll just go on to our next guest. Dr. Ashik Saleem is also with us today. He's the head of mental health program, Sajida Foundation, and he's the managing director and lead psychiatrist from PHWC. Hi, Dr. Saleem.
Oh, hi, Shreya. It's a pleasure to be here with you today, and I'm looking forward to some wonderful discussions with our esteemed guests. So, good evening to you.
Great. So I'll just go on to kind of present what we would like to talk about it first, and that is, we'd like to get an understanding of the organizations that you're working with, and a kind of description about your organizations, the history of each of your respective organizations, and the service modalities and existing operational structure that is being followed. And also some success stories would be wonderful. I would like to request Dr. Ashik Saleem to talk about PHWC and his experience in Bangladesh, and share a few stories with us, and then others also please join in.
Thank you, Shreya. So I guess first I'll just give a brief introduction about myself. So I'm a psychiatrist. So I'm the doctor kind, which means I had to go to medical school and do my MBBS, and then I studied psychiatry. I did my post graduation, and then I've now been in Bangladesh, set up PHWC about 4 years ago, along with Sajida Foundation, and we're offering clinical services. A little bit about myself. Right now, I have two roles. So the Sajida Mental Health Program, I'm leading the Sajida Mental Health Program, and this initiative, this webinar series, is part of our campaign with regards to that. PHWC, the main focus is to provide high quality individual mental health care. So we provide secondary and tertiary care, which means that when somebody has developed an illness, a mental illness of some sort, we try and provide intervention, whether it's counseling or medication. So our focus is quite on the cure of illness. We do have another side which deals with corporate or employee well-being, and that's a different conversation. In Sajida Foundation, we also, our mental health program, the focus is a little bit broader. So we want to provide quality mental health services to people who can't afford it, and that's it is quite broad. And I guess through the webinar series, we'll explore different series. We'll talk about different aspects of the service Today, of course, the focus is suicide and the prevention of it and the discussion of it. And we've been very fortunate over the pandemic period to be working very closely with Kanpati Roy. We've been collaborating together, Sazal Foundation and Kanpati Roy, to be able to try and expand their services. I'm not going to attempt to describe Kanpati Roy services because Yashin is here, and I'm going to leave that up to her. So that's a little bit about the services, a little bit about us, a little bit about me. I'm not going to hog too much time because I really want to hear what others have to say. But we talk about stories, and I'll just give a couple of little caveats here. And suicide it's like the most extreme result of a journey, and very often the journey is, the difficulty is that when it's a completed suicide, we never get to sit down with the person and actually find out what happened. So we make assumptions that, oh, this happened and that happened, but we never really know. We get to talk to people who got close to it, but they came back. They received some kind of intervention, and we as mental health providers, we as friends and family, we try and provide some kind of whatever it is, to try and make sure that extreme event doesn't happen. So I feel that when we talk about suicide, it's not just the act of completed suicide, but also the feeling of not wanting to exist is highly significant. As a psychiatrist, as a clinician, I've lost patients to suicide, and it's extremely painful as clinicians, and each one has been a painful learning exercise, because every time we say, okay, we could have done this different, and I think for me in this conversation, I think what's important is for us to talk about it, so that we can all think about how we can do things differently. There was a big discussion I think a year or two ago, when a student was under extreme amount of pressure from a particular school, and then eventually ended up taking her life. And then the whole conversation about how we teach children came out, gender issues, sexuality, how do we put pressure on young people or people in the community, that eventually pushes people to that level. So, but I think a forum where we start conversation is a good start. So I think saying that, I'll conclude this part, and we'll move on to hear from our other participants, please. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. Can I ask one of the other guests, Ria, if you want to talk about your experience, your organization's experience, and its how it operates, and any of your success stories?
Thank you so much, Syria, for the opportunity. So I would actually like to link today's theme to how Lifeline International was established in Australia. So Lifeline was established by Reverend Dr. Sir Alan Walker, and he received a call from a distressed man who wanted to talk about the challenges that were happening in his life. The Reverend set up an appointment with the man, and unfortunately, on the day of the appointment, the man took his own life. And the Reverend was determined that no one would feel alone and feel unsupported. And that's when he founded the 24-hour crisis line to offer support to people who are feeling distressed. And with the shift and the move and the growth of Lifeline, which was established in South Africa in 1969, Lifeline Johannesburg was established under the scope of offering free mental health care or services to people. And I think people who were the founders of Lifeline Johannesburg were ahead of their time, because they were offering a service that was not a priority in the 1960s. But right now we're seeing that mental health is a priority, and it's a universal language. So much as it is important in Bangladesh, it's important to focus on in South Africa and other parts of the world. So our counseling scope and model is from the Carl Rogers theory of person-centered approach. So what are we saying with this approach? We're saying that we focus on the human, the person who's coming to us and seeking support for emotional well-being. So we have a mental health spectrum of free counseling services through the 24-hour crisis line. And innovatively right now, instead of offering face-to-face because of the pandemic of COVID, we are now offering remote counseling services to the community. So it means that people can connect with us via WhatsApp or via Zoom through booking and receive counseling support in that sense. And I think this is a crucial time to make emotional wellness accessible to everyone, because people feel like their worlds have been turned upside down from the pandemic and also from other external factors that have been affecting them. And we believe that it's important to allow people to have that safe space to be vulnerable and to be heard in that sense. So in extending our services, we have the corporate division and the employee wellness services division as well, which says that we're not only offering mental health to the community, but we're also engaging with corporates and companies to say, let's focus on the emotional well-being of employees as well. But in essence, Lifeline is about making emotional wellness accessible for the community. Some of the things or the pillars that we stand on is integrity of the organization, integrity of our clients and our counselors and staff. Another pillar is diversity. As Dr. Saleem said, that it's about making it accessible to people who are from different racial backgrounds, who are in different religious backgrounds. So it's not limited to one particular group of people. Then the next pillar would be innovation. So when the crisis of a pandemic took place, we didn't give up and say that we cannot offer counseling support, but we found innovative ways to still connect and to still reach clients who are still feeling distressed during this time. And the fourth pillar, which sums up our value system, is passion. So we have more than 100 counselors who are volunteering their time at Lifeline to say that we would like to give back to the community. We'd like a person to feel heard and to feel held emotionally. And in essence, those are some of the services that we offer, in essence, offering emotional wellness support to everyone.
Thank you so much, Ria, for that introduction. I'd like to go on to Dr. Yashim Iqbal to talk about Kanpete Roi and her organization.
Sure. Thank you, Sriya. There are many things actually quite similar to what we were just hearing from Ria about how Kanpete Roi works, but I'll still give a very brief introduction to the organization and how it's been operating in Bangladesh. Kanpete Roi has been up and running for about 8 or 9 years now, and it's an entirely volunteer-run organization. So everyone who answers our phones are all volunteers. It's part of the Befrienders worldwide network. Befrienders is a kind of global authority and international network of suicide prevention organizations that follow a particular model for the prevention of suicide, which essentially just focuses on being present with somebody who might need them in terms of compassionate judgment or non-judgmental listening, and sort of the refraining of trying to, change somebody's mind or give them too much advice or anything like that. So we it's essentially just a telephone number, right? And a number that you can call if you need somebody to talk to about anything that's on your mind, feeling isolated, depressed, or simply just lonely and want someone to chat with. And we've come kind of a long way since we first started. When we first started, we were only open for a couple hours a day, for a few hours a week, a few days a week. And over the past several years, we've slowly been working on expanding in whatever ways that we can. In this past year or so, especially with the COVID pandemic, things have really changed quite a lot, both I think in terms of how much people are paying attention to issues of mental health and kind of realizing that this is something that perhaps we want to be thinking about or talking about. So just I think general awareness, but I think also the efforts that people are putting into trying to keep services running even in under very difficult conditions, right? So we've actually been able to expand our app quite a lot with the assistance of Sajida Foundation, which has been great. So our helpline is now open 3 p.m. to 3 a.m. every day, with volunteers available in that time period if anybody ever wants to speak to them. And it's been a little bit of an interesting journey, kind of working with the constraints of the pandemic to continue making this service possible. But a quick acknowledgement is probably due, of course, to Sajida Foundation, but also to our volunteers who really come forward to do this work in a very selfless way, which is always wonderful for us as organizers and as people who are trying to make these services work. It's always wonderful for us to see.
Wonderful. I'd like to hear more, but before that, I'd like Mr. Zahidul Islam to talk a bit about Society for Volunteer Activities, SOVA. Mr. Islam? I think your mic is on mute.
Thank you, everybody. I am proud to Sajida Foundation for give me the opportunity as a panelist. I live in Jhenaiza, and most of the people suicide in Jhenaiza district in Bangladesh. One day one suicide in Jhenaiza. Every year 350 to 400 people die every year in Jhenaiza district, and 10 times that is 3,000 to 4,000 people attempted suicide in Jhenaiza. We are working in here from 2005 till now, and at first we are working to union in here as a pilot project, and some data collection. Then we see that most of the people attempt here, and that is the age below 30. That is very young people died by suicide in Jhenaiza, and most of the people here they are illiterate under SSC examination. So here every year here 300 to 400 people died, but no organization, national or international or locally, work here to prevent suicide. So we are working 2005 by project from Marshall Jono Foundation, Bangladesh, but now the project closed, and we are working. Personally, I am working as a researcher, and and Jhenaiza suicide is alarming issues, because here most of the young student, young people, those who are married, are early marriage and divorce, beating by their life partner. So there are very difficulties, but this situation occurs every in our country everywhere. But why Most of the people in Janeda attempt suicide or died by suicide. We don't know how, why they um, they are why they are attempt or die. Here I think here uh, a in-depth research is needed here. In-depth research is needed here, and national or international organization, um, um, uh, national or international organization work here, and if they work here, and then suicide may be prevented. So we are working 1 year by Nasrullah Psychotherapy Unit, Dhaka University, Clinical Psychology Department. Then we are working 2 in 1 for 1 year as a pilot project. Then we are working one-to-one motivational activities, and we prove that one-to-one motivational activities or counseling activities is very better than group counseling or group motivation. Then we are when we work by the support of NPU, Clinical Psychology Department, Dhaka University, then we have a great result. That is then that 2 union, no suicide in that in a year, no suicide there occur. So we think suicide is preventable, and if we are working together, suicide may be prevented. And here we are we created a group in our working area at village level. Then every village we created a group, 10 to 15 person. Then they work in that village, and they motivated the people who are committed suicide or who are risky person. And how we determine the person, that is our some our some we think that some people who are early marriage, divorce, dowry problem, uh, those families occurs this situation, and there has been um, um, addicted by some um, um, addicted people. They are no they cannot work, they cannot earn, but they beaten their wife or life partner. So that family always that family is always cruel and angry to each other. So suicide occurs in Janeda every day. You know, total total suicide in Bangladesh. We don't know how many people suicide in Bangladesh. No concerned person like police department or health department consolidate the total suicide. But I personally work in this area, and Jinaida suicide, I am working in this area, and I collected the information, and this information, I collected the information, and this information deliver it to the people who are work in this area. And in the meantime, two articles publication in Crisis Journal and other journal uh, according regarding Geneva suicide. You know, this is circulated, and Google search, you can see it in the Google search. So I requested to all, please, suicide, if you want to prevent suicide, or suicide, how we can prevent suicide. Everybody, every person, every those who are working in this area must be thinking about this situation. And thank you. I think this year so many activities is ongoing from 2005 to till now. So this year is exceptional to me. So many organization and so many telephone, so many organization, electronic or media, print media liaison with me, and they asked me why so many people died in Geneva, so many people attempt to suicide why Geneva. Uh, so I am requested to all, please, you are working in this area, and research in this area, why so many people suicide in Geneva, and how we can prevent suicide in Bangladesh. And you know, most of the people, most of the countries, female suicide is lower, and male suicide is better than female. But in Geneva or Bangladesh, female suicide is better than, higher than male suicide. So why female suicide is higher than male suicide? This is the situation, and we if we are working together, this situation we can change. And you know, last 2020 COVID-19 year, here we see that most of the people, male people suicide in this year. So statistics is very high, because because jobless or others problem, and female suicide is lower. And last year 320 people suicide in Geneva. Of them 151 male and 169 people women. So the statistics is 47 is male and 53 is female. But others year we see that highest male percentage is 44, and highest women statistic is 70. So this year is exceptional, and I think this exceptional is this exceptional cause
Yes,
is
Mr.
COVID-19.
Islam.
So thank you all. This arrangement and
Yes,
give me the
thank you, Mr.
opportunity.
Islam.
Thank you.
For your Yes, thank you so much, Mr. Islam, for your, all the good work that you're doing and all the research that, you are conducting or wanting to conduct. We can elaborate upon that later as well. As we discuss on, I'm sure that's going to also be part of our discussion, where research is also very important, as Mr. Islam highlighted. Currently, I'd like to go on to talk about the community level impact and the challenges that are faced. So as we all know, Kanpetiroi and Lifeline Johannesburg are both working and giving emergency support, and their programs are about emergency support. I would like to ask both of you, what are some of the community level and operational level challenges that you have faced in relation to service protocols? If Ria, you can start,
Okay.
or Yashim,
Okay.
whoever.
Thank you so much, Ria. I would say the community level impact that we've had is connecting with people, not just in Johannesburg, but in South Africa as a whole. And in some cases, we have connected with clients globally. And suicide currently is illegal in some countries. It's seen as a crime, it's taboo, and it carries a lot of stigma. And I would like to link it to the constitution rights in South Africa under the Bill of Rights. And it says every person has the right to life, and every person has the right to inherent dignity. So when those rights are compromised or infringed, it means that people feel that the life circumstances that they are going through are so unbearable that they just want to take their own lives. And one of the researchers has also said that instead of looking at suicide as a criminal offense or as something that's taboo, but rather let's focus it on as a multidimensional mental health problem that can be tackled as it is, because people take their own lives because of, for example, a young girl can take her own life because she's been bullied, or a young man can take his own life because he's feeling life pressures at home. So instead of stigmatizing suicide and stigmatizing people who do commit suicide or who are feeling suicidal. Rather, let's work at an intervention level to see and explore what's happening for the client as they come for counseling. So some of the impact that we've had is, like I said earlier, being adaptable, ensuring that clients can reach us in different forms and in different capacities in their lives. So instead of having to come in for a face-to-face, people can be at home and still connect and have a counseling session with one of our counselors. And in that way, we are ensuring that more people feel heard and feel seen. So in the past year, or since COVID-19 began in South Africa, we have had have been counseling about 250 to 300 clients. And for us, it's not about the quantity, but rather the quality of the service that we offer. So a 15-minute call can mean the world to a person. A 1 hour call can mean everything to a person. And some of those success stories come into a person saying, thank you, or I feel lighter. And that's where we want to promote mental health accessible for people. Another element is that we preach what we practice, rather, what we preach. So we offer emotional support to everyone, but we also offer it to our volunteer counselors. So our counselors also receive ongoing training. What's happening in the mental health space currently? How can I fine-tune the counseling that I'm offering to accommodate the current context or situation that the client is experiencing? And in that way, we ensure that the well-being, if a counselor feels holistically well, then they are also able to offer a holistic and quality field service to the client. So in essence, we also engage with people online and through social media. And with those platforms, we realize that some people, because we connect with people from underserved and underprivileged communities, a client might say, I do not have data to have that WhatsApp call. how do we help that client in that regard? So for some clients, we connect them to other organizations that would fit or be appropriate for that client. So if we cannot help the client in that instant, we can connect them with an organization that might be a better fit for them. And I think in this space, collaboration between NGOs, collaboration like what's happening right now between the Sajida Foundation and having Dr. Iqbal with us and Lifeline Johannesburg is an opportunity for us to voice out the services that can be available for people, and and how to ensure that everyone feels that they can access support at a touch of a button right now.
Thank you so much, Ria. Some very interesting points about how you say you practice what you preach, and also about not having very time bound. As the amount of time you're giving each of your people you're talking to, that's what matters a lot. I'll just move on since we are a little bit short on time. I'll move on to Yeshim because I'd like to hear from her as well about what are some of the challenges that, in terms of service protocols that Kanpete Roy has faced, since it also provides a kind of emergency support program.
Thank you. I think one of the largest challenges is reaching people on a large scale, right? So what we always say is that anybody who needs someone to speak to can call us, but getting that information to people is much easier for the folks who are kind of already very plugged in, often on the internet, often looking at media already. It's a lot easier to reach them. So what that ends up meaning is that we have the demographic that calls us tends to be largely urban, largely middle class, and oftentimes the people who are already sort of on the internet. While we know, of course, from others who have been speaking as well, that Bangladesh is a very big country. There's a lot of people in it. There's a lot of people in rural areas and cities where it's a little bit harder both to reach them, but also even just to explain what these services are about, right? The idea that you might pick up the phone to call someone remains a little bit of a new idea, even though Kanpete Roy has been around for almost a decade now, and of course helplines have existed much longer than that. But explaining some of these things, or even just making the information available on a very large scale, can be a little bit of a challenge. And then, of course, there's also the constraints of the pandemic have sort of taught us a lot about the privacy that people need in their homes to make these kinds of phone calls, right? When everyone is stuck at home, it's very difficult to talk about some of these things, to make that call when your mother-in-law or your husband or your children are all kind of around you all the time. It can be very difficult to make these calls, and there's certain demographics who simply just don't have the privacy or don't have the time or don't have the space to actually be able to connect to these services. And of course, it's somewhat our responsibility to figure out how to make those available for them. And these are kind of some of the things that we're having to think about on an ongoing basis, really.
Yeah, those are very interesting points. And, I'll just jump in with very little bit of my own experience in this field, in the sense that I'm not a counselor or an expert at all, but I used to host a show on radio where we'd taken live calls. And, a lot of people would feel comfortable. So, it's interesting that, as you were saying, Kanpete Roy is now till 3 a.m. So a lot of callers would feel more comfortable calling in the middle of the night, because that's the only time they have a little bit of privacy maybe of their own. So all those aspects are so important. And now I think, as you were saying, in COVID, when everybody's in the same space, sharing a space, it must be so much more harder. I'd like to touch a little bit about, we were already talking about collaborations, and Dr. Saleem talked about how Kanpete Roy and Sajida's mental health program are collaborating, or Lifeline, there's collaborations that are already happening. But going forward in the future, or as we, as the work progresses now. If you could, touch upon, Dr. Saleem, we've not heard from you for a while. If you could touch upon some of the innovative kind of projects or potential projects that are in the pipeline, or you would think would be possible, future collaborations that you yourself look forward to.
Thanks for that. I mean, from Sajida, one of the things that we wanted to do was to identify projects that are successful and that they're doing well. So, for example, Kanpitiroy, a highly successful project, and we identified, we partnered with them, and we tried to increase. Well, we have managed to increase the time and the number of days. So that was a big one. Other than this, another innovative project that we have started, we're trialing, and we'll talk about more details in another webinar, is called Shojon, and it's essentially a free mental health service. Initially, it's we're in the beginning phases, so anybody can call this number, speak to a junior counselor, have an ad hoc session, and if necessary, they can then get referred on for regular counseling, again by a junior counselor under supervision. And in the referral phases, there is a small cost. However, if somebody can demonstrate that they do not have the financial ability, then Sajida Foundation subsidizes that session as well. So it's quite an interesting model of looking at providing counseling at highly subsidized rates. And we've been able to do this, or had the courage to do this post-pandemic, because we learned that we are able to deliver clinical services remotely, even though it's not ideal, but we can do it. And this has showed us that we can reach people in communities where it's a lot harder to reach, and we can do that while it's being cost effective. So that's quite an interesting project where we're doing a collaboration with an organization in Chennai called BALM, and they're helping us train some highly skilled paracounselors. So the idea is that it's a 6-month diploma course, so that they can have some very a high level of clinical skills, and hopefully we can then provide a hotline where the initial triage is done by them, and I think it'll be a synergy for Kanpitiroy and us to do this together. Other than these two projects, the paracounselors, where Sajida Foundation, we're focusing a little bit on the clinical services, and by that what I mean is residential or clinical services that require housing. And we've got 2 ideas right now which we're looking into, and one is having a facility focusing on rehabilitation of mental health problems, so focusing on functionality of the individuals, and the second one is where we're looking at housing in the community. So big projects, but we're looking to trial them, and like you, that the only way we can do this is through collaboration. So we're trying to meet new partners, trying to find people who will work with us. The biggest challenge I find working in mental health is always the lack of human resources, and this is standard across the world. This is not just Bangladesh. I worked in the UK, it was the same. In New Zealand, it was the same. And in Bangladesh, it's the same. There aren't enough doctors, aren't enough counselors, not enough money. And we need to figure out how to provide the best care we can, knowing that this is the way it is. So that's mine. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else want to talk a bit about collaborations and innovations? Please jump in.
I would like to jump in because mental health, as I shared, is a universal language. So a person who needs mental support in Bangladesh, in USA, in Nigeria deserves the same support that they can receive. So it's really important that organizations from a government level, from an NGO level, really form relationships in terms of making mental health a priority. Because as the World Health Organization says, that when a person feels that they are capable on a social, physical, emotional and cognitive level, then they are able to be proactive citizens, and make an impactful difference. So if I feel healthy, if I feel supported, if I feel loved, and I feel that I have good connections with people, I'm able to give back to the community. So if people are not supported and feel that their lives are unbearable, then it's a loss from a societal level and also from a personal level as well. So I would say that collaboration, creating relationships, having more funding, and like Professor Islam mentioned, doing in-depth research into how we can make better interventions for people in the world.
Thank you, Ria, for that. Next, I'd like to circle back to where we started. As today we are observing World Suicide Prevention Day, and the motto this time, as all of you know already, is creating hope through action. So I would like to request all of you to share. We've already heard about your programs, what you're doing, but share your take on this motto, and specifically what actions you have pledged to take for World Suicide Prevention Day, or in the work of suicide prevention, and how we can better the scenario with regards to suicide in Bangladesh as well, and elsewhere, like Ria's working, that too. If all of you could touch upon this topic a bit, please. Who wants to start? I guess I should name someone. Dr. Saleem, you can start, or Mohammed Islam, if you'd like to say a few words, please.
I think I'll go first, and I think we have about 5 minutes left, so we need to be brief. I think that very often, and it's not just in mental health, I think very often we spend so much time talking that we don't really end up doing much. And I think I think it's an inspiration. Yeshim is an inspiration because she just did it. Ria mentioned the Reverend who just did it. Professor Islam, he just got into the field and they did it. And I think that's the theme today. That we're all talking about it, but we've talked enough. We know enough. We just need to do something. It doesn't matter what you do. Obviously within our competencies, we just need to do something. It's like you said, you did a radio program and people talked to you and you just listened. And very often that's all we need to do. We just need to be present and we need to listen and we need to refer. And I think that the slogan today, this is what I take from it, that we need to give people hope because we're doing something, right? Not by just saying we're going to do something. So that's my two pieces.
Thank you. We just need to start the work. Who else wants to say a few words? As I said, the time is very limited. We just have around 5 minutes, but please go ahead.
I think in short, I would say that I'm so happy to hear that we focused on the words mental health. And a lot of the times we focus on mental illness, and illness has a lot of stigma with it. So when we shift the word to mental health, it creates a space for people to focus on their well-being on a holistic level. And I believe that at a grassroots level, we are making an impact. So it's about one client, one counselor at a time. As Yashim mentioned, it's about that crisis line being available for people at a time that they need to speak to somebody. And with the suicide, it is important to look at the statistics, yes, for context and how we can make improvements. But I believe that one person losing their life is one too many. And it's an opportunity for us to see how we can create opportunities for them to be heard at a bus stop or at their homes, or having a counseling session with one of our counselors, or with a psychologist anywhere in the world. So it's really about making mental health accessible for one client and with one client and one counselor at a time.
Thank you so much for that, Ria. Yashim, would you like to add a few words about your pledge or your stance on this creating hope through action?
I actually think that our previous two panelists have spoken about that absolutely perfectly. So I won't take any more time. I will just very briefly thank everybody who has contributed to these efforts over the past several years, and in whatever way they could. It's been really wonderful to see that some people are very passionate about actually being on the phone and doing the work on the front line, and many people are also passionate about supporting from the back, right? In our case, that might be bringing snacks for the volunteers. In that case, that might be helping make our community a nicer place for everyone again, right? And there's so many different ways to be involved. So just a quick thank you to all of the people across, of course, Kanpitiro, but the other organizations as well, who have stepped up to make everything that we do possible.
Thank you. Mr. Islam, would you like to say a few words about kind of parting words before we wrap up the session?
Thank you. I think who are working in this area, we are working together, and we
I think
sorry.
I think Mr. Islam is having some network issues. Yes, I think I'll just yeah. Can you hear us?
I think we are working together, and we created a platform for suicide prevention activities, and a national when we create a national platform to prevent suicide, then we are working all the country, and we are do something for.
It seems like we are kind of losing connectivity with Mr. Islam. And sadly, our time here today is almost over. We just have a minute left. And I'd like to thank everyone for taking part in this webinar. This has been a great learning experience for myself, and from what I gathered from all of your conversations and what you shared with us today is that each individual and organization is so committed towards bringing change in the sphere of mental health, and in creating, as this year's motto is, in creating hope through action. And we can only hope that we'll go towards a time when we bring more awareness about suicide prevention and reduce the stigma that is associated with it as well. Tonight, I would like to bid everyone farewell and thank everyone for joining us for this riveting discussion that we've had today. There'll be a few more webinars coming in the future, so I believe 7 more. And I look forward to meeting all of you there and having more discussions about mental health awareness. Thank you, Sajida Foundation. Thank you, Kanpitiro. Thank you, Lifeline. Thank you, Shobha, and thanks to all our esteemed discussants. for joining us this evening.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the arrangement.
Thank you very much.